How is this going to work?
15% of sales, 15% of the revenues that they make from those sales into the China market of the H20 when it comes to Nvidia or AMD's equivalent. Once they start shipping those, they will get the export license, according to this reporting, if they pay that 15% into the US Treasury. That apparently is how it's going to work. There are legal questions around this. If this is categorized as an export tax, potentially there are legal challenges to this. But according to our reporting, this is what Nvidia and AMD have signed up for. And again, quoting some of the analysts in our own reporting, pretty unprecedented. Hard to think of another example of a US corporate signing up to this kind of export demand from the US government. China, meanwhile, yet to officially comment, John, on this development, but they have in recent days pointed out through state media and through blogs affiliated with state media concerns about what they describe as national security risks associated with Nvidia's H20 at a time, of course, when China is now showing no signs at all of walking back from its doubling down on building out its own chip sector and ensuring that it has less dependency on those US AI accelerators.
Tom, you've spent years in China. What do you think they're thinking behind the scenes in terms of the U.S. going to corporate America and saying, you can send these chips to China that we originally blocked because of national security concerns, we just want a piece of the pie?
I think if you rewind the clock 6 months, China is in a much better position versus now. The H20s, the licenses, it seems, will be approved for those. You look at the movements in terms of the equity markets for China. Yes, they have all the concerns about the domestic consumer and about the real estate and property sector. Those remain. The geopolitical tensions, you talked about the fact that this truce is expected to be extended again by 90 days. China continues to invest. You see the developments coming through from the likes of Huawei at 7 nanometers and Xpeng, according to reports, coming through with a chip of 5 nanometers. Not closing in on 3 nanometers that the likes of TSMC are churning out, but closing that gap. So they're going to get access to the H20, but continue to build out their own AI accelerator capacity and try and close that gap. I think China will probably be rubbing its hands at the prospects of potential domestic pushback on this policy as they continue again to try and funnel investments into AI accelerators that they continue to need that underpin the models, of course, of Alibaba, DeepSeek and others. And it's really high silicon that sits at the heart of Huawei that is leading the charge on this front.
Tom, are you basically saying that China needs the MI308 from AMD and the H20 from Nvidia just to bridge to basically when they're up to par where the United States is in terms of these advanced AI semiconductors?
China has not spelt out, Anne-Marie, its policy around this, but it is pretty clear that a reliance on US chips is not what China is going to be comfortable with. And the fact that Jensen Huang has essentially said, look to the US and to President Trump, we should be allowed to continue to supply these AI accelerators into the Chinese market, precisely because if it comes to it, we could just pull the plug on those. That gets picked up by China. They're listening to that. So yes, this can tie them over until they have their own capacity. There's the other question about national security. The case being made by the Biden administration and by the Trump administration to allies in the Netherlands and in Japan, do not sell your hardware and software into the Chinese market because of national security concerns. Well, that now has put a big question mark over it, because if you're prepared to pay that 15%, then suddenly national security concerns seem to be being put on the back burner.